headquarters, and we'll get to see some of that and hear what she has to say.
Okay, why don't we run that, fellas, and we'll take a peek ourselves.
And what the people down there did was release the steam, because if that cold water had actually hit those boilers, the whole thing would have exploded, and that would have been the end of the story. And as a matter of fact, and they also, the men down there closed all the bulkheads and then clambered up. You know, they were doing this in water that was coming up to, well, here and beyond, and then they climbed up and went up to the deck. But obviously, the whole thing would never have happened the way it did had it not been for the presence of mind and the extreme courage and ability of the people down below. You know, we so seldom talk about my grandfather as a hero, but the first heroes of this story were certainly the people down in the boiler room and in the stoking room. By stoking, I mean it was coal-fired, so they had people who shoveled coal basically into the fire of for the boilers. This is also the key, or a key like the key he used. And you'll notice there's a side lever on the key. And that side lever, now I should tell you, Tom Pereira, who gave me this photo, is in conversation with historians about the exact nature of this key. But my grandfather describes this key as the reason to have the side lever was if it was in the up position, you would be able to receive, and when it was in the down position, you could transmit. And what happened to him was that in the dark, because he had to rearrange his apparatus so it would actually work, and he rigged up a condenser and so forth with a Leyden jar, what he did was he broke, by mistake, he broke the side key. And as I said before, he was a left-handed sender. But you can see the key is on the left side, so he had to hold that key together while he was sending with his right hand. And at that, the amount of power he had was very low, so he had to send very slowly in order for things to be clear at the other end. This just shows you the deck. This is a photo from a photo that was published in a newspaper showing you the deck of the Republic where it was wrecked. In the background, behind those two fellows, is the wreckage well, actually, there's the cabin and sort of part of the wreckage of the cabin. You can see the door to the cabin there. And then you can see where the bow of the Florida just scraped along the side. What happened with the Florida was it hit straight on. That hit crumpled the bow, but because the deck itself was higher than the level here of the deck on the Republic, the overhang actually just went along and scraped everything. And in fact, my grandfather says that you remember that lifeboat that was near there? He looked out of his now half open to the air cabin and noticed something dark in the water, and that was the lifeboat floating away. In the process of the collision, there were on the Republic one person or a couple of people who were severely injured, and then 2 people were actually killed in the process. And you can see the 2 shrouds up here on the left-hand side of those 2 people. And in fact, my grandfather speaks of walking out of the cabin and seeing them. They weren't shrouded at that point. And he realized this was not a very good situation. There were also a couple of people crushed in the bows of the Florida. But all in all, those were all, and one of the severely injured people died. But those were really the only people who died in this accident. In other words, as we'll see, as many people were saved in this as were killed in the Titanic. Now, it was thanks to this part of the world that this was all made possible. That's on the top you see Nantucket Island, and I've marked Marconi Station. It was the station at Sconset. that picked up, and there's a picture of it that picked up the CQD message from the Republic. Jack Irwin, who we should write a whole book about him by himself. But Jack Irwin was on duty there in the hut, and it gotten kind of cold, and he sort of had dozed off, and then he felt sort of cold, so he woke up and to put coals in, and lo and behold, that's when he heard the message coming through. And because of the wrecked situation of my grandfather's transmission, the only station that he could get to, all the ships were too far away, the only station he could get to was the Sconset station. And the Sconset station then relayed the message out to the ships in the area. But they were over 100 miles away at that point. And so it was really thanks to Sconset and Jack Irwin and Mr. Gilman, who came on and helped out as well, who made this whole thing possible. And I should tell you that this became an incredible sensation, because what happened then is that Captain Sealby of the Republic determined that the Florida was going to be more seaworthy than his own ship, and had all the passengers on the Republic transferred over to the Florida, which ended up overloading the Florida. So when the Baltic finally came in, and I don't know, we can spend a half hour talking about getting the Baltic in. I'll do that in a second. No, I won't spend a half hour. But all the passengers were then, when the Baltic got there, rowed over, including the Florida's passengers and crew. All the surplus crew were then all rowed over to the Baltic, which meant that the sailors, and here's the other part of the heroism, the sailors of the Republic who did that rowing, just to bring everybody from the Florida to the rescue ship, the Baltic, 83 boatloads. And these guys rowed that first in fog and then in a driving rain. And so, my grandfather is cited for his heroism, but everybody else who participated did their duty in amazing amazing ways. How do you get the Baltic to the site of this accident? Well, the problem is, of course, in a fog, and the fog lasted the whole day of the 23rd. In the fog, two ships with no position systems. There was no way of knowing which direction a ship was located. You could tell how close it was by the strength of the wireless signal, but you couldn't say whether it was north, east, southwest, or anything. And so the big problem was getting the rescue ships to the side of the Republic and the Florida without colliding again. So it turned out the Baltic spent a lot of time zigzagging, and my grandfather could tell by the strength of the signal it was getting closer and closer. Meanwhile, both ships were sounding foghorns. That's to say, the Florida, the Republic had no longer a foghorn, obviously. The Florida was sounding foghorns. The Baltic was sounding foghorns. They were setting rockets up. Nothing they couldn't hear. Finally, the Baltic was down to its last rocket, and the Republic was down to its last one. So the Republic sent its last bomb up. The Baltic didn't hear it. Now there was one left. What do you do? All the remaining sailors that were on the and officers on the Republic formed a circle facing outwards. And with the help of wireless, they set a time for the signal. And with the help of chronometers, which they coordinated between the Baltic and the Republic, they could tell when they should have heard this. And my grandfather was lined up out there listening, and he heard the faintest of faint sound at the appropriate moment. And the fellow standing next to him said, maybe you're right. I think I might have heard it too. And they pointed in the direction, which was indeed